recording already?
Yes, we're on.
I don't know, weird parts are revealed now.
It's been 8 months since we did the podcast. I've just noticed that's kind of like in the way of the island. There we go. Okay, it's technical problems here as we go along. But it's been 8 months since we did the original podcast. Going over basically you as a filmmaker, a bunch of other things. For 2 hours, blah, 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 up at the bar when we had the little alien mic stands. I feel like we're kind of a bit more prepared this time, a bit more of a comfort setting.
Yeah.
So I suppose we were just talking about European actors dominating the kind of film industry now, and we were just saying it's quite ironic that they'll do all that, like the whole population apart from Leonardo DiCaprio is now European. But they won't bring the film industry here. Like, that is staying put in Central America.
Well, I mean, the main reason is, I remember when I was in uni, they were teaching us kind of like about the difference between the American actors and the European actors.
Okay.
It's kind of like, it's quite strange when you realize that, like, in the UK, actors are, the whole education's for stage, whereas in America, it's actually done for TV. So I don't know how that explains them, like us taking over that side with all that stuff, but it is kind of ironic that everything on this side is not geared towards, TV, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you get like established things like BBC and all that stuff, but how could I put it? I went down to like Glasgow Short Film Festival lately, because, I was invited and all that. I went down there and I remember getting into a discussion about a guy, and he was busy talking about like our cinema versus like big budget American and stuff. And I remember just saying to him, like, in my opinion, I think like our cinema is a little bit more pretentious,
right?
Like because it's so small scale. Like don't get me wrong, it's good. Like our stuff is good, but it's like they have this kind of like attitude that we need to keep it small. You know what I mean? We can't go big and stuff like that, which is really annoying.
Do you think that kind of reflects the mentality of just the country as a whole? And how we kind of talked about last time. Like one of the differences that you had noticed was everyone kind of downplays themselves. Not everyone, but it felt like that kind of tone of, oh well, we could do that, but like maybe it's just safe not to do that. Do you think that's something that probably like is a reflection of that, or do you think there's more to it?
Yeah, I think it's just like it's a weird kind of stagnance. Like I hear stories. I still need to like watch the old films, but I heard like once upon a time UK cinema used to dominate quite well. Like it wasn't always as big as Hollywood, but like back in I think it was like in the 50s and stuff. Like when James Bond was really going on.
Yeah.
Back then we had a really good cinema, but things have changed naturally since then. Yeah, it's just I don't know. Like it is kind of just this. I guess you could say this is weird kind of cultural mentality. Like British. When I say British, I mean all UK reserved whatever your political belief in it. We tend to kind of keep it just like small scale. We're just like, how can I put it? Keep it nice and orderly. Don't shout. Don't raise your voice too much. We do kind of have that thing. Like it's, geez, I didn't realize I was going to put a whole like country culture onto this.
Yeah, but, it's gone deep already.
We are like quiet, man. We really shouldn't be. We should be like getting excited, express it.
Crazy because like America's the exact opposite, right?
Yeah.
Like it's right in your face. Best country in the world. Everything we do is the best. Even if it isn't, it's still the best. You know what I mean? There's that PR machine that it has, and like you say, like opposite here.
I mean, there's a pro and negative to that. Like, I mean, unfortunately, you have to avoid what you hear that classic term echo chambers now.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, like maybe with Americans, like I'm not gonna lie, there's actually a cultural thing I do like about them. Like I know a lot of people like to like look down on it, like these guys will keep screaming they're the best, they won't shut up. Yeah, I get it, it's annoying, but in terms of like your confidence and belief, they pull off a lot of stuff, you know. It's kind of like my friend was talking about. He follows like the Apex, like that video game in the championships
like Apex,
and stuff.
Yeah, Apex.
He was telling me that like the difference between European players in general versus American players. He said European players tend to be more cautious and defensive,
right?
Like a little bit more there. But the Americans just tend to like rush.
Just go for it.
So it sometimes backfires on them, but sometimes it really just gets the advantage. Like how can I put it? What I'm trying to say is like that confidence gets them far.
Yeah,
it really does. But at the same time, it's a bit of an echo chamber where like if you're screaming too much, you can't hear anybody. They say like if you speak, you should listen like twice as much. So like, sometimes like that. I'm not an expert on culture and stuff. This is just like just my slight opinion on film
opinions
stuff.
Are all our own and all that kind of disclaimer.
Please, no cancel 2022. Don't worry, the nukes will do that. Anyways,
Well, if you're watching this, thank thankfully, that's not the point yet. So enjoy the last 6 weeks on Earth that you have. But yeah, but like even like it doesn't. Not everything has to be like good either. Like, have you ever seen the film The Room? You ever aware of this film?
I'm aware of it. I still need to watch it.
It's apparently like there's a film about this film.
Yeah.
So I think it was James Franco and Seth Rogen, and those guys did like a spoof version of it, like a mockumentary of sorts, called The Disaster Artist. So it follows a guy called Tommy Wiseau who also auditioned to be Batman in The Dark Knight, which is a really good watch. I'll have to link you that video at some point. But like that film has got a cult following because of how bad it is that it's good.
Yeah.
And I think like America is one of the places on earth where that can kind of happen. I mean, I suppose it can happen globally, right? Especially with like the new internet age. Yeah. Like if something's so bad, but it goes viral, you become popular and successful from that, right?
Yeah. Well, in the end, it's just down to entertainment. Something can be bad, but as long as it's entertaining, you're gonna watch it. It's like watching somebody make a fool of themselves. Sometimes people go and watch that video again because it's entertaining.
Yes.
It doesn't exactly have to be like that, but I don't know. Like my favorite example of something that is bad, but I really respect it is like, have you ever seen like Wakaliwood? Like Who Killed Captain Alex and all that kind of stuff?
Oh,
like Nollywood movies.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, like you get all these Nollywood memes of like, like why are you running and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They're entertaining. Like, like in terms of sound quality, they're pretty bad, but it's still entertaining just to see that stuff.
Yeah, and that makes the film popular, maybe from just that one clip, right? Like the one from The Room is like, oh, hi, Mark. Yeah. Like that's the one I hear all the time. And it's like, it's such a simple thing. It's not acted very well or whatever, but that has probably got way further than something that's probably like, I don't want to say mundane or something, but something that is not bad, but not like winning Oscars.
Well, yeah, you're right. That's kind of like, how can I put it? The best example I can think of. I don't want to say all British films fall into it, but it's kind of like what when I hear about like Scandinavian noir and stuff. Like you kind of get this thing where it's really well made, but it isn't the most appealing to the general public, which isn't a bad thing. Like everything has his like niche audience, but if you base your kind of entire industry around that, you're not really going to be making much profit back into it. Like the more I look into things, the more I realize like, I don't know if I talked about this last time, but it's kind of like the difference between artists and business people. Like, for example, like everybody's talking about like, why is there not a big industry up here and all that? And like, even though there's a ton of people who actually have the skills up here, there's a lot of people up here who have the skills to make a film. Like we can make movies anytime. The part we don't know is the business side.
Yeah.
That's the bad part. And a lot of people don't realize this is like the best example is the Hollywood system.
It's the corporate side, right?
Yeah, there's a corporate side. Because the thing is, like, everybody wants to make a movie, I want to make movies, Like, personally, I'm not the biggest fan of business and stuff. I just want to make a movie, tell nice stories, use whatever creative craft I can to make a film. But how can I put it? In the end, that means you can't organize something, like, to distribute it.
Yeah.
You won't know crap about that until you bring somebody who knows business. Now, the people of businesses, they know the right places to go. They know who to contact. They know how to distribute it, where to sell it, how to market it so it makes a profit back. But these guys are not artists. What they care about is the numbers. They don't care about the heart and soul of the story.
Yes.
I'm not saying all of them are pure evil, but unfortunately there's some...
Most of them are.
Don't say pure evil, but like the truth is they want to do business.
Yeah, there's an agenda behind what they're doing, yes.
So they don't really care too much about the heart of it. And unfortunately, this is why like a lot of people are like, why is there so many remakes and stuff like that? It's because the big companies follow a business model. They go with what the numbers say is successful.
That's same with everything though, right? Not just films, like it could be...
Oh, everything, yeah.
Yeah.
But how can I put it? I can only talk about film because that's
no.
small area of expertise.
I'm not going to ask your opinion on foreign policy or something like that, like...
But, no, but it's like the best example I can always point out is kind of like Lord of the Rings. Like before Lord of the Rings, like fantasy was very niche. I mean, you had your films, you had like Conan the Barbarian, you had Willow for those real cult, like fellow film fanatics. But like they were never really big things, so always like a niche thing. But then you had Lord of the Rings, which is just generally appealing.
Yeah, there's like a massive like production, massive screen, massive kind of cast, so on and so on. Now,
you see, the thing is like, that was great. It was amazing. Of course, it's Lord of the Rings. It's amazing. But the thing is, like, when they started that, it was like a new thing. To be fair, like, if you look at the behind the scenes and stuff, everybody was like, a lot of people thought they couldn't pull it off.
Yeah.
So they kind of had so much creative freedom, but at the same time, they had the corporate side who how can I put it, was an investment, but I don't think they were really going to get away with too much from it.
Yeah, they didn't expect it to be what it ended up being. Yes.
Yeah, so they gave the artists a lot more freedom in doing what they did, and it just happened that boom, it hit, like everybody loved it and stuff. But then after Lord of the Rings, you get so many of these weird fantasy things that came out, like Aragon, Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah.
They had all these like fantasy knockoffs because they were all trying to copy the business model of Lord of the Rings. They're like, oh, fantasy, like we can get the money from the nerds now, you know? Like
as soon as like there's a market for that, they juice that.
Yeah,
you know, it's a franchise thing, right? Like, you know, the one that's the funniest one and one that's the most mainstream is the Fast and Furious series, right? Like, you watch the first two films, and you're like, you know, they're kind of well made, and I enjoyed the story. And then you just get into like 4, 5, 6. Jason Statham's like killed their family member, and then he's sitting with them at the family table and stuff. And it's like, what is going on here? You know, like,
bro, like that's like fantasy for chaps, man. Like, I'm not gonna lie though, like Fast and Furious is a weird one where like I understand the evil beast that it is, but at the same time, it knows what it is.
Yes.
So sometimes even I can watch it. Like, I'm not going to say the good movies, but I can watch them and be... You remember, like, I used to talk about, like, bad movies being entertaining?
Yes.
The truth is, that's kind of like the Fast and Furious movies. They're bad, but they're entertaining.
Trust me, if you watch the 7th one, right, like, a mate of mine, like, got me to go see it at the cinema and that. And then there's a bit where... Obviously, it's very sad what happened to Paul Walker and stuff like that. We're not, like, taking the piss out of that or anything. There's a bit... where Vin Diesel's about to get taken out by a guy in an Apache helicopter, and then literally without warning, The Rock comes belting down the road with a minigun to take the chopper out, like just carrying it because like The Rock's obviously a massive unit, and that's funny to me. It's meant to be like a serious scene in the film, and then there's the part where this is when I knew I was like, I can't watch more of these. Was when something happens in the film and then they've got to do the final thing to end the film. I can't remember. You know, it's been a while since I've seen it.
Yeah, it becomes a blur with those movies.
The Rock just goes, "We've got to stop World War III," and I'm like, that's it. Like, this was about like car smuggling and stealing cars, and then it became about family. Now it's about stopping world wars and foreign policy. No more. You know, like this is where this should end.
Yeah, but like I said, it's one of those weird things. Like, dude, when I was back in South Africa, we put on Fast 7 like I think 3 or 4 times over and over again. It was mostly because my niece she kept getting interrupted while watching it. But I ended up watching that film one too many times over and over again. But it's kind of one of the thing that even they kept putting it on. How can I put it? It's like the difference between like cheesy like don't think movies and then at the same time really intense watching films. Like it's kind of like. Going back to like when we were talking about like, you know, movies up here, like in Europe in general, they tend to be quite serious, you know, like the serious kind of thing, thought provoking. But the truth is, like, if you want to like eat something, you just want to sit down and eat with your dinner, just have something quick, you can't put that on. But you can put Fast and Furious on, and you'll still be entertained a little bit, you know. Like there's like a weird market for that. Like
there's a market for eccentric and over the top stuff, isn't there?
It's quite strange when you realize that sometimes bad can actually be good.
Yeah, it's
like watching most of the time.
It's like Sharknado, right? That was another one that got like quite popular because of how bad it was.
Yeah. It becomes weird like when you try to think about it, because it's like I love Lord of the Rings, but I got to be honest, I can't put that on if I just want to watch something quick and eat. You know?
Yes, because that's I mean, first of all, they're all like 3 hours long, the films, right? Which is quite an achievement to keep someone's attention for that long, especially in today's day and age. Obviously, like it's probably about 20 years since those films came out, so it's a little bit different. But you know, there's probably that trilogy and like The Godfather that have managed to like span out for so long, right? Each film being 3.5 hours, and like people being gripped through all the way through. And but like you say though, if it's not something that I'm gonna watch something before I go to bed, I'll put on Lord of the Rings because you're going to be going to bed at 4 a.m. at that point, you know.
No, but like with Fast and Furious, like, because you're just not paying attention, you could just like...
it's like background noise.
For example, it's like the Transformers movies. They're always playing on film 4.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like... you can watch it while eating dinner.
Yeah.
The truth is, it gets the viewership. And in the end, that's what's making them cash.
Yeah.
If you think about it, like... They know they're making bad movies, but they know people are going to watch it.
Yeah.
In the end, you can say we can blame ourselves, but at the same time, I don't really want to because, you know... It's fun seeing things go boom, you know?
Yeah.
As strange as it sounds. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for doing like proper films with good storylines and stuff, but I think it's wise that how come we're in that day of age where people are like, these films are terrible, they're absolutely garbage. And the truth is, like,
everything's become a lot more tribalized, right? No one can say, "Oh, I like this film," and the other person's like, "Oh, well, I don't like it." It's like, well, no, we can't be friends now because you like that film, you know?
Yeah,
like,
some people take it a bit too far because in the end, like, how can I put it? You get really good films that you love, everybody loves, and then you get a bad movie, right? But you do get in the middle movies, you know, which are okay.
Yeah,
just like, yeah, it's all right, you know? I was trying to find, like, especially, this is why I gotta be honest, I don't really pay attention to too many film reviews now because I tend to find this quite the bias. And a lot of people don't realize that film reviews are just one person's opinion.
Yes.
They really are just one person's opinion. So sometimes you have, like, I don't know if it turns into this weird echo chamber among reviewers and stuff, but sometimes you start to realize what the audience likes and what a reviewer likes.
And they're two different things.
Yeah. Like, because, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a film audience where a whole bunch of people love watching films and they're dedicated to it. They can see, like, the themes and all that stuff, but that's not actually a majority of people who watch films. A majority of them are just people who just like, ooh, movie.
Yes.
You know?
This looks good.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. Ooh, you know, explosion. Oh, okay. There's a good storyline here. And in the end, like, you have somebody who's like looking for all these mise en scène, like, like skewed angles and all that stuff. But a majority of people don't pay attention to that. So sometimes the review will be like, this movie's terrible, there's plot holes and stuff. But in the end, a lot of other people are just like,
no, I thought it was good.
Yeah, it was alright. You know, it was alright. I didn't really think about it, and in the end, when you're a film person, you feel like you're ruining movies for other people because you end up telling them, "Oh, there's a plot hole here. There's a plot hole here." It's kind of like, geesh, man. For me, like, universally, like, the last 3 seasons of Game of Thrones, I hated. You know what I mean? Like, many people.
Well, the ending was meant to be like frustrating for everyone that was like a fan of that series. Like, I only managed to get through season 1 when I first heard about it. Just because. The first episode I watched was I know this is like further in than season 1, but it was the famous, you know, hold the door episode. It was that one, right? And my mate was like, "Oh, you should watch this," and that's good. I was like, "Right, okay." And there's a bit in it where one of the wolves like protects one of the people, and the wolf gets murdered by is it the White Walkers? Is that what they're called? Yes. And I'm like, whoa, what the fuck, dude? and they're like, well, you know, it's deeper than that. That's wolves from like the first episode of the first season. You learn to love that wolf. And I was like, that's even more intense. And then you go back to the first episode where like guy's climbing up the wall, catches 2 people having incest, and then the guy just pushes them out of a 20-story window. I was like, this is really intense. Like, I don't know if I could take 6 seasons or 8 or whatever it was of this.
No, but the thing is, like, where was I with it again? Yeah, I was talking about like the last few seasons of Game of Thrones, right? So for me, I could say this with Star Wars, I could say this with The Witcher, especially season 2, especially the last Star Wars films. As a film, for a person who wants to do films like a career and I'm like invested into it, there's so many problems with it, like that I can't enjoy it. But the truth is, if you take somebody who's not into film at all, you know, they're watching something and they're entertained. They're seeing fighting, they're seeing stuff. It's like, some people can just shut their brains off. They can suspend their disbelief way more than I can.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that. If anything, it's kind of like that saying, I hate it when people say you're too easily entertained.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. It means life is not miserable for you.
Yeah, exactly, right? Entertainment is a positive. It's not a negative.
Now, I'm not saying it's an excuse to make bad cinema. I think they should always try to make something good.
Don't be go making Paranormal Activity 9 or anything like that, for sure.
But the thing is, like, it's just the truth. I think what I'm trying to round this off to is, again, you remember that business and film thing?
Yeah.
Like, I want to go back and study business arts because I learned the film side of it, the entire creating side. I can make a whole movie if you wanted me to. Like, easily. I can make a movie for you that could be put in cinema. I know what to do. To distribute it, though, to like know where to get the finance and all that stuff. I mean, I kind of know where to get it from, but how can I put it? It's really a business thing you need to learn, and that's actually a big gap in the arts, pretty much. Because
is that something that you want to go back and learn just for the sense of like keeping control over what you're making rather than having a third party? I suppose.
In a sense, yeah, because like I said, the problem is you have business people who are there to do business, nothing wrong with that, but they're completely ignorant about the whole art side about it. It's not to say they don't watch films and stuff themselves. It's just, how can I put it? They're all about the numbers, you know, the demographics. They're all about things that are a little bit soulless, in my personal opinion. But then you have the people who all want to make films, you know? Everybody wants to make films. It's a fun thing to do. but nobody really wants that responsibility of making it really come together.
Yes.
There's a whole logistics behind it, you know? It's kind of like, yeah, you can make a movie, but in the end, if there's no one to show it to, you know, it's like, what's really the point, you know? Some people make it for themselves, but if you want to make an industry out of it, and that's a big reason why there's no industry up here. What I personally believe is that a lot of filmmakers got to learn business. That way, we have control over, you know, how it's being made. That way, you can bring an industry in it. You know, like you love the passion and you know how to distribute it. Therefore, good films are being made and a bigger industry is being made. You know what I mean? Like, we know how to, like, you can balance the needs of both sides.
Yes.
You see what I mean? Because, like, to be fair, even the filmmaking side's got a bad side to it. Filmmakers all want to do their crazy ideas, but sometimes they are a little bit too out there.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's where it's the good thing of the business side mitigating
like,
it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like for example, somebody wants to like make a 6-hour movie or something. Like
Yeah,
that. Like you kind of have to rein the person back, especially in this day and age. Don't get me wrong, you can do it. I've heard of a movie that was 7 hours.
Oh, I watched a
Western
documentary
one.
that was 5 hours long, so that was up there. I didn't watch it at one go. I'm not an absolute savage, but yeah. What do you think? Like, do you think cinema's still going to be alive and well coming out of the whole pandemic stuff? Because obviously, each day passes, there's a new streaming service, right? Like, obviously, you have the main, like, big ones, Netflix, Amazon Prime. In America, I think, like, Hulu's quite big and stuff like that. But I'm even seeing stuff like HBO Max, Paramount Plus is now coming along as well.
I think
Disney Plus obviously being a massive one as well.
I think it'll still be a thing. I just don't think it'll be as popular as it used to be. In the sense that when you go to the cinema, I gotta be honest, it's more for the experience.
Yeah.
You know, of being in the cinema, seeing it on a giant screen. It beats being at home. You know, people
Yeah.
want to leave the house, even if it's just to sit down somewhere else and watch a movie.
Yeah.
But I think the main business focus will shift over to streaming services. But I guess you could say this is where we're seeing the degrading quality in film, because how can I put it? To do something in cinema, like to make back in the old days, to make a good profit, you had to make a good movie.
Yeah.
Everybody was coming out of the way to pay and all that stuff. But now, because you're having streaming, the truth is it does cut the cost down quite a lot. Therefore, I don't think budgets are going to be as big as they were for films. Now, I'm not saying a good budget makes a good film.
Yeah, it translates to a good film. No.
But it means they're more likely to... The whole thing is, again, to numbers. They want to have as many shows as possible on the streaming service. I'm not gonna lie, that's not a bad thing for filmmakers. It means they're more likely to give me funding and stuff to do something. But at the same time, just be prepared for... We're already seeing it, like, degraded quality and more of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's so many things with... This is where I'm saying again, like, as a film person, I can't suspend my disbelief as much as somebody who doesn't watch it. But the best example I can put is, like, Witcher Season 2. I think... I'm a big fan of the Witcher books. I think this is a big bias of me, and I'm a big fan of the Witcher games. But even as a filmmaker, there was just so many problems with Witcher Season 2 compared to Season 1. Season 1 surprised me. It was surprisingly a little bit faithful to the books, even though the whole aesthetic was off. But Season 2, like, there's just so much bad writing, so many plot holes and everything. Like, I mean, even for, like... I don't get how people are calling it a success, you know? This is what I'm saying. I think it's really skewed.
Do you think like it kind of takes off the fame of like the other things? Like, because Game of Thrones was based majority on the books, and obviously the same with The Witcher, and obviously the game was massively popular. I mean, one thing that I struggled with is like, you know, Henry Cavill, I'm sure he did a great job, but when I don't hear Geralt going, "What's over here?"
Like
when I don't hear that, but like, because I associate it with the video game, you know, which is kind of weird. Because I think, especially when we like a piece of art, we don't like it changed very much. Like, especially like, for example, in like the video game terms, if like there's a specific voice actor in one game and then they change it for the same character, like that instantly is like, well, this is not the same thing anymore. They do kind of do that in films sometimes. Like, you see it with like the same characters played by a totally different person, and it makes sense obviously if the character's grown up or something like that. But obviously there's just times where like actors fall out with directors and all that kind of stuff.
No, I'm not gonna lie, Henry Cavill surprised me. Like, I gotta be honest, I was never the biggest Henry Cavill fan before Witcher.
Yeah.
But he was the one person, he's an example of somebody who's actually so passionate about it.
Yeah, he played the game, right?
He read the books, games. He's the only person in that entire production who seems to have done it. Because, like, that was another thing that pissed me off for Season 2 is the showrunner said, this is a direct translation of the books. I can tell you that 90% of what happens in Season 2 is not in the books. Not in the books. It changed everything, and this is the thing. I am one of those people that believes that when you make an adaptation, you got to stay as truthful as you can to it. Otherwise, make your own thing.
Yeah.
That's simple. Well, I say that's simple, but I know why it happens. Because people are more likely, especially companies, like, I said, they're all about the numbers. They're more willing to go with a known IP, like, known thing that's working really well than to put funding into something completely itself.
Yeah,
it's a
something
risk.
with less risk, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, you end up getting these filmmakers who actually want to make something different, but they're never getting the funding for it. So they end up invading something else. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you can do this. And then they're like, all right, sweet, they're going to try put their own agenda into it. That's the bad thing. I'm really against it. I believe that no matter what you adapt, you got to... I think it's a respect thing. Like, there's something that already works. You know when they say if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, don't fix it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you already have something that's already it's already successful, it's already working well with that. And somebody else put a lot of work into setting up that universe and everything. I personally think as a filmmaker, you got to respect it as much as you can.
Yeah.
Now, realistically, there's some things you have to change for it to work onto TV. But it doesn't mean, like, that's only like 10% of something you need to change. Realistically, you can make it work, Maybe change the structure a little bit, but the plot points, the characters should stay the same, I don't know. It just really irritates me because
there is so many like spin-offs and remakes of films these days, like you said, with TV series and that. Like, Gotham was one that I watched, and obviously like there's no Batman in it, but it's centered around like Batman side characters, I suppose, if you will. And the new Batman's just came out. It's meant to be very good, but we'll see. Someone told me that The Dark Knight was overrated the other day, and I was like, don't talk to me about it. Yeah, so will we touch on your time away, because you've had a bit of a roller coaster the last 6 months of going away last summer, expecting to be back for the fall, and then things didn't go quite as planned. Blah 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 blah. Because I'm interested particularly because when you went back to South Africa in the summer, right after we'd filmed the intro for this. Thank you very much, by the way. I remember you were saying I'll send it over next week, and then I think you were maybe away for like 1 or 2 months or something. That was the original plan.
Oh, you mean when I went to South Africa?
Yes. When you
South Africa was wild, dude. I can only say so much.
Yeah, no, don't worry.
Nah, I went back there because in my mother's culture, which is Shona, there's something called Kurura Guva. If there's Shona people watching this, but any chance, if any Zimbabweans are watching this, please, I apologize. Sometimes I mess up my Shona. But the best way to describe it is that if somebody dies, you have the funeral, and then 2 years later, you have like a celebration.
All right, okay.
So kind of like in Louisiana, it's like supposed to be something like that. That was the main reason I went back there. It was a big thing because in my family, 3 members had died years ago, and the Kurura Guva was late. So it was like a really big thing. It was worth traveling even during the pandemic. I know it's controversial, but like we really had to do it. So I went back there. Yeah, I ended up in Zimbabwe. That was a whole... I can't put it to words. It was really culturally different. I saw some culturally very alien things from Europe. Let's just say, but it was great. It was great fun. But yeah, Omicron happened, and I ended up getting marooned in South Africa for about 6 months. And it wasn't bad, but the thing is, like, I will say this: if you want something that's interesting about it, is like I ended up experiencing the dark side of South African bureaucracy.
Is this what you were talking about, the whole passport?
Yeah. I was trying to get my passport done, and how can I put it? It took about like 4 or 5 months to get my passport done, but it turned out it was already done within 2 months. But every time I kept going back there, they just said it wasn't done.
Why would they? What kind of reasoning do you think they? Oh, okay.
Yep.
More cash.
Or not just that. It's just straight up negligence. Sometimes the people just wouldn't check. Like, that's the bad side with South Africa, unfortunately. Like, it's a fun place. Just don't do any paperwork there.
Yeah.
Like, anything involving paperwork, passport, getting your ID, all that kind of stuff, it just becomes really crooked. It's sad for me to say that's kind of the state of my country at the moment.
Because wasn't there, like, some kind of issue when you originally arrived back? They were, like, saying that you, like... passport was invalid or something. It was a British passport. Being
a dual citizen as a South African, the problem is so my South African passport was expired. So I still had my British one. So in theory, I should be able to go there. Fine, no problem. Just use my British one. So I got there, And the person at the border entrance is like, wait, you have a South African passport, why are you not using it? I'm like, well, it's expired, I can't really use it. And they say, we're not allowed to let you in without you. If you're dual citizen, you're supposed to use a South African passport, you can't come in. I was like, wait, what? So the person was there, being really stubborn. And the thing is, my mom actually came back with the same issue a few years ago and didn't hassle her at all. So eventually the person's like, all right, you can get in, but they gave me a warning on my passport. And I was like, all right, that was strange. Again, the more I learn about South Africa, the more I think they were wanting
more kind of,
bribery. Like, there's a whole hidden language in South Africa involving bribery. Like, that's the annoying thing there. Like,
we kind of touched on this last time, right, when you were talking about what you'd seen in South Africa and so on. And the irony of it was, like, you were going in the summer, and at the time there was the whole red list, quarantine hotel stuff. But, like, the pandemic at that stage looked like it was, like, calming down, which it turns like it has done, right? Because, like, obviously I know Omicron came along, but that's actually turned out to be not so big of a deal, without like trying to get anyone up in arms. Like, of course it is a big deal, but like,
what's that ominous glow in the distance?
But like, it didn't turn out to be the same threat as the previous kind of variants had been, right? And because I remember we were having a few conversations, because obviously you were in South Africa, where it was, people say like they were trying to call it the South African variant, which wasn't necessarily the case. It was just identified in South Africa. It wasn't officially, it was like, oh, this is where it started, blah, 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 blah. But there was one doctor that I kept seeing on the TV, a South African doctor. I don't know if she was maybe like in the news in South Africa or whatever, but it was a lady with like glasses and that, and she was like saying pretty instantly like this was like milder disease. And then obviously like over here, as soon as we heard about it, like because the red list had gone at this point, you were due back, and then we're like, right, okay, we're gonna, because we're making a documentary in the coming weeks / months, we'll get that going then. And then I was like, I messaged you saying it's off the red list and that. You're like, cool, like I've set up a date to come back and that. And then the Omicron stuff happened, and then it was like literally the next day, like the travel bans had been reintroduced. There was like, it wasn't even a red list, like you couldn't just even come back. But throughout the whole of winter, as we shall say, like they were trying to, like everyone over here was like trying to say, well, we don't know the data yet. And I'm like, well, if the person that has discovered this variant of interest is saying, let's just pump the brakes a second, it's not the end of the world. And then, I mean, I ended up getting Omicron at Christmas, which was, great, because obviously I would have loved to have just stayed in my house for 2 weeks over the holidays. But it was like, obviously it's something that spread immensely quick, unlike anything we've ever seen, but that has never really been the kind of talking point of, like, you can't really control a disease when it spreads, really, to an extent. Obviously, since it's airborne, but the whole kind of concern about this has always been how virulent is it, what's the mortality rate, so on and so forth, all the other kind of complications that could come with that in terms of hospitals being overwhelmed and stuff. Like, because even though tons of people could be off sick at once and that might stop like trains going and that, like that's only a temporary thing that will go over within a week, whereas obviously people in hospital might be for months and that could, But what was it like in South Africa? Because we have had a conversation about this. It was very much not as
it wasn't a big deal.
It
really wasn't. Like it was weird, man. Like in the end, everybody in South Africa summarizes more to do with politics more than the actual variant itself, because they banned a whole bunch of countries from Southern Africa. But there were some other countries that had Omicron, even worse than us, that was not on the travel ban. Like, I think Kenya was one. Kenya did not have a travel ban on it, but people could go between there and the UK, and Omicron was big there. It's politics, man. Something behind the scenes. That's the only way we can describe it, because it wasn't fair what happened. And the truth is, dude, in South Africa when I was there, like, on social media, you could see, like, the rates of who's infected. South Africa never had as many infected people as the UK.
No.
Like, even before and even now, like, the rates of infection in South Africa are much smaller than in the UK.
Yeah.
So, okay, place that has more infected, banning people with less infected coming over.
Yes.
That's the only way I could see it,
and
man.
It,
it was
it
just
peaked quite
stupid.
quickly, because by the time this had been identified, the cases were going down, and obviously cases going down means less people that are going to get sick in that, right? Because the more people it infects, the more likelihood it's going to come into contact with people that it will cause serious illness for, and so on and so forth. But over here, it obviously sparked mass restrictions again, not to the extent as previous, but there was polarizing things like vaccine passports were introduced, especially towards Christmas, and that the whole Plan B thing came into, Plan B was like, it was more for England, I believe, because the four nations have had different kind of approaches in that. And in Scotland, it was like they were issuing guidance, which was basically, if they had the funds to impose restrictions again, that's what they would have done. But like, no one could go to like events. It was, the guidance was only have 3 people in your house at one time, and I was like,
in the end, I don't think it has to do anything with public safety. I think it's just to do with politics.
Yeah.
They're just gonna like say, all right, we're putting restrictions on, and when that starts becoming really unpopular, they loosen it up.
Yes.
But then loosening up the restrictions becomes unpopular because now people are getting infected again.
Yes.
And they bring it back. So they're trying to do this like riding with the waves
and
kind of
there's
approach.
two polarized sides. That one, it's like, as soon as there's one case, shut everything down. And then there's other people that it's like, I don't care if it's like 28 weeks later out there, keep the pubs open. You know what I mean? That's the kind of two extremes.
Well, that's because of the tragedy of COVID. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but the tragedy with COVID is that it's not dangerous enough. As strange as it sounds, because if it was really dangerous, if it was something like the Spanish flu, this pandemic would have been done later, because people would have taken it way more serious. They would have taken more precautions. The thing with COVID is that since it's not so dangerous, everybody plays very loose with the rules. The government, us, heck, even I'm guilty of playing loose with the rules of this. People are more likely to do stupid things.
Yes.
The greater good idea's gone out the window because we don't... If somebody gets COVID now, everyone's just like, I just got COVID. Just going to have to wait a few days now, It's just a nuisance. That's the only way I can describe it. It's not so much dangerous anymore because now we already have the vaccines and stuff. It's just a new normality,
There's new therapeutics coming out now all the time. It's not the position of what it once was, and even I think because there's been such how do I say this without YouTube be going careful there? There's been a lot of there has been a lot of government control, right? I don't mean that in the sense of like they're there like, how do we get everyone to stay home? But there has been a lot of powers forced through that the state have gained control of because of this, right? And this isn't the first time something like this has happened. Like, you think of maybe the Patriot Act with the whole war on terror stuff and that. This has happened time and time again. And I think more people are becoming aware that when crisis happens, people take advantage of that in certain ways. And I think that makes everyone a lot more skeptical, especially with being able to communicate with each other, especially on the internet, for example. Than ever before. They can kind of have that kind of questioning argument, I suppose. And I do agree with that to an extent. Like, I thought, like, over Christmas, like, the restrictions that they brought in did nothing, especially when the other 4 nations didn't do them and Scotland did, and then that kind of turned out to be the same. And it's the same now with, they've just extended the mask mandate for another couple of weeks because of this sub-variant. Like, it's not even a variant now, it's a sub-variant. And people are getting it. And I mean, I'm no medical expert, blah, 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 blah. But from what my understanding of it is, it's just going to keep, not replicating, keep evolving to replicate. And with the general kind of pattern and things like that is that it becomes less virulent so it can survive by replicating in hosts. So I'm hoping that in the next couple of weeks that, like, we're not good, because a lot of the frustration that this has caused people is the constant goalpost moving. It's like, it'll be here, then we'll stop everything. It's like, wait a minute, no, just give us 4 more weeks, give us 3 more months, give us half a year. That's kind of what everyone's getting annoyed at. And I think I think the majority of people are more annoyed than not annoyed now. Like, at the start, when we had no idea what it was, like, we didn't know if it was Spanish flu or blah, 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 blah. Everyone's all right, okay, whatever, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that was the exciting time.
Yes.
I ironically missed that. I was like, oh yes, the end of the night. I can report my apocalypse script. It was a little bit more exciting.
Because, like, I mean, I suppose in a way, like, we'd always kind of been a bit naive to the thought of something spread. Because there's been a few scares in my lifetime anyway. Like, we've had swine flu, that was one. Ebola was one that played up for a bit. Stuff like SARS. But it got stopped pretty quickly in the host country, I suppose. Whereas, like, we seen what was unfolding in Wuhan in January, where literally they were having to build hospitals to try and keep this under control.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, well, that'll just die down in a few months. And then the one time that, because like I remember like stuff like swine flu and that, the adverts were out straight away, and this was before even like a case had been confirmed, like in your face. Where these adverts for this only kind of came about 2 weeks into when you were locked in your house, so they're kind of pointless. But I'm thinking that we should be over this now. Like, it is time to move on. Obviously there's other stuff going on in the world right now that's serious, and that I think we've pretty much done everything that we can to.
Do you think? No, this is just a question that's probably in my head right now. But do you think that maybe it's because like everybody's just gotten too used to being in pandemic right now that they're finding it so hard to get out of it?
100%. I think there's people that have been institutionalized in this way of life and probably don't want to go back to. Funnily enough, when I was having the conversation with the member of parliament, it's going to be part of the film and that. Because she has like a quite a big vested interest in the topic that we're doing on and that. She was saying that one of the things that she like found is that people on like the autistic spectrum and people that are neurodivergent and that had actually felt better during like lockdowns because they didn't have to face the pressure of a neurotypical world. Like they have to like think about like work, school, all this kind of stuff where like some people can't cope in those environments socially and that. And she was making it the point like that says a lot about like what's going on at schools and the kind of environment that people are in that. But yeah, like I think especially as well, I think some people will just get used to it. Like routine is important for all humans, right? I think even, you know, as most people say when like people bring up like an autism spectrum disorder or that, it's like they like routine. But like most humans seem to like routine, right? Like people are always kind of in their own
routine.
ways. Yeah.
No, but the thing is, like, when you're talking about the schools, like everybody being institutionalized, right? So when I was walking here, I went past the field, right? You know, like where Lossie High used to be, and now there's the new one. So I was walking past it today, and I just looked at it, and I was like, just like the old school, it still looks like a prison.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not joking. Like, it's just updated. Like, I think I told you once that the old Lossiemouth High School looked like the prison in my old town back in South Africa. Like, almost exactly. I got spooked when I first moved up here.
Yes.
So I was walking past it this time, and I was just like, this still just... Like, I'm not joking. The building itself it just looks like a modern prison.
Yes.
You know, like the modern prisons where they're just kind of like that.
Yeah.
And it just made me start thinking. I'm just like... I know there's like the talk that school is prison and stuff, but then I was just like, geesh, I don't know how to put it. My mind was just like going there. It's just like, are they like, is there like a deliberate, this is going to sound like real, like deep state kind of stuff, but is there really like a weird kind of movement to try get people used to working in a very concealed environment?
I think there's definitely an element of conditioning at school, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you think about it, like, especially in secondary school, so you can, let's just say you're interested in science, art, and drama or something, but you're not going to be able to take all those subjects because English, maths, and physical education are mandated, right? Now, I'm not saying that it's not important not to have English and maths because they are used in everyday life, and physical education is important for your health and everything, and, you know, no doubt about it. But cutting off those kind of avenues for people, I think there's a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of nudging people away from individualism and kind of trying to get everyone into trades, especially in this area, right? Because it's obviously something that's, you know, massively needed in that, and, you know, farming and all these kind of trades that you can think of. And like sometimes I do wonder, like when I see that, it's like, is that actually to benefit the person, or is that to benefit?
I don't know. Like, my main issue, I guess you could say, with the school, like, school education is not perfect.
No.
But admittedly, like, I mean, it really comes down to individuals here. I can't really blame a system. I think it's like, for example, with me, I always had like, I guess like you say, I've always had my goal and objective. Like me, I like filmmaking. So I always try to push myself in that direction. But I can't speak for everybody else who's young. A lot of people don't know what they're wanting to do, you know? But at the same time, the part that I blame is not so much the individuals, because I think people not knowing what they want to do is weirdly normal.
Yeah, 100%.
I tend to meet more people who don't know where they want to go in life than do. which I don't think is a completely bad thing. It's fine, you know. Some people are just exploring. They need to find that. What I find is the crime, though, is in the education system. I always felt like the teachers were never. They really shouldn't have been there. A majority of them. Like, I'm not saying they were like terrible, abusive and stuff, but what I'm just saying is like, if you have somebody who's lacking motivation teaching you, you don't get any motivation.
Yeah,
yourself.
there's a trickle down effect to that, isn't there? Yeah.
Because like I like good teachers, which are rare. I'm not gonna lie. Like if you have a teacher that gets you excited, energetic, I mean, if you have a problem with that, that's your problem. But that really shouldn't be affecting the teacher. So like for me, it's just I feel that. Because that's the thing I had with high school. I never felt motivated. Like in the last 3 years, I took it a little bit seriously and I tried to push it, but that was more a little bit on my own initiative. But like, I never felt like anybody was like, yeah, you can do it. Push forward, push forward.
Yeah.
I get it. You know, teachers, you're around the kids. I know they can be like soul sucking, but like in the end, like I feel like it just feels like teachers, there really needs to be like a lot more headstrong, or it's like something needs to be done to teach them to be a lot more headstrong and more inspiring towards people. Because I felt like that was the issue. Like a lot of kids just popped up there. It just kind of became like, do the numbers, go home. Do the numbers, go home. Like nobody really felt motivated, and there was like nothing pushing towards it, man. That's the only judgment I can say. Because I don't know about system. I know like education is really hard. It's weird to like try get it right. But I think in the end it is to do with attitude.
Yeah.
Get everybody motivated, wanting to do it.
And you see that in like later life when maybe people are doing jobs that they don't like. And they'll base their entire kind of, I've got to get through this so I can get to the weekend to have a good time and then do it all again. And like, even when I was in the temp job and some of like stuff that I found quite tedious, I was like doing that. I was thinking, I've wasted my weekend now because I was like, I've had a good time and now I'm going, do you know what I mean? And I knew that like, that kind of routine I'd got myself in of doing that was something that I didn't want to do. Do you know what I mean? Like when you realize it. Actually,
yeah, that's the kind of course they should put in schools. They should actually put like these kind of, you know, like if you go online, YouTube and stuff, you can find a whole bunch of motivational stuff that like teaches you how you should like ordain your life. I guess you could say order it. They should do that in schools a lot more.
Yeah,
like, teach like try to like teach kids like, listen, if you guys have a goal and objective, maybe you should try push towards it. I don't think it'll work for everybody.
No.
Like a lot of kids are lazy. I'm not gonna lie, they are, but like it will be a little bit better. But what was I gonna say? Yeah, I was speaking with guys who are mostly foreign dudes, like especially Finnish guys who did like national service. This is gonna sound really controversial, but I actually think they should bring back national service.
Oh dear.
No. Hear me out. The reason I say it is because like, especially in UK, like I'm not gonna lie, like we have so much comfort.
Yes,
we have so much comfort.
You're right. Yes,
that we became like we have become lazy. Like I'm putting myself into this thing. Yeah, I'm not saying you Brits. You know, like I mean me as well because this is something I'm trying to train myself out of. This is why I went traveling on that gap year and stuff. Like I don't know, a part of me just felt like to just be coming out of home with all the comforts. I just felt like I would not be ready for home. I think for me, I have a bit of more of a bigger viewpoint because I've come from Africa, where there isn't so many benefits there compared to here. Like I'm used to seeing like street kids begging there, whereas here you would never see that. You know, here like if somebody's in trouble, you just need to go to JSA, you're getting free money. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is like, whenever I meet people from countries who tend to have like national service and stuff, they have a little bit they're a little bit more motivated. They have better goals. Don't worry, I'm not saying it's perfect. Like I speak with my Finnish friend. There's like extreme alcoholism in Finland. Yeah. But at the same time, if there was like national service, like just a year of it would probably get people like, you know, just being more organized in their life and stuff. It just feels like I've never been in the military. I might eat my own words, but it's just whenever I hear about people and come across people who have done it, they just seem to have their life a little bit in better order, a little bit more motivated. I think
the idea of, I mean, I don't think it has to necessarily be national service, but I think the kind of concept of doing something that's difficult for a certain period of time will help you in life, because when you see something difficult, when you do something difficult, everything else in your life becomes easier. Does that make sense? Like when I started going to the gym for the first time, like 2019, and like I could barely lift any weights and stuff like that, and I could barely like work out and that because of how bad like I'd treated my body over the years. Like as I went through that and kind of stuck to that, and then managed to get myself in a better place, I've realized that anything else that I do in terms of like, I don't know, something like public speaking or even something like this has become a lot easier and less kind of intimidating because I've done like I've pushed through things that I thought I wasn't going to be able to do, if that makes sense.
No, but at least like with you, you're like pushing towards something that you consider positive. You know what I mean? Like you seeing the bad side of it, and you're like, you know, in your mind, you're mitigating it to go away from the bad side.
Yeah.
You know, you're trying to find the good and positive stuff, which is good. It's the right thing. But I think the thing I've also learned with bad situations is that not everybody takes the positive out of it.
No.
You know what I mean? A lot of people sometimes go deeper into the rabbit hole.
Yeah, they kind of dwell on it.
At least, especially with the jobs I've done, I've come across people who have just been stuck in there, and they just go deeper and deeper, and becomes this weird thing of like, I don't know if they hate themselves or something, but they just become miserable, and it kind of just seeps out everywhere. The reason I'm bringing up the national service thing is because, like, geez, like I said, it's just the idea of discipline is what I like.
Yeah.
The idea of discipline and people being a little bit more organized in themselves, that would be good.
Yes.
So what I'm like, if there is going to be like people doing a hard thing for a short time, there definitely needs to be the guidance of what the good thing you can get out of it, not just to throw them into it.
Not for the sake of doing it, but the benefit that you'll get from not overcoming adversity, but like, you know what I mean, like doing something that, because I think it's a powerful thing, that doing something that you don't want to do, right? And obviously, like, exercise is like one of the main, you know, especially for me, like. Even when I do stuff now, I'm like, oh, I really don't want to do this. But like, it's weird because it resets all the time as well. Because there's never a point of like, oh, I've gotten through this before, so it'll be fine. It's more like, oh, why have I got to do this? Like, I'm never like, I'm gonna feel like absolute dirt after it and that. And then
what's that saying from Aristotle? Is it you are what you do repeatedly?
Yes.
And so like, I forgot the rest of it, but pretty much, I work out as well, believe it or not. But the thing I find is like, I think everybody just needs to find their own way of making it entertaining.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like you said, like it gets repetitive and boring. I'm not gonna deny that it does get repetitive and boring. So my way of getting through it is that I replace it with something else that's entertaining while I'm doing it. Most people like to listen to music, but you see, that my problem is I don't want to be too focused into that. Like I feel like I need to be doing two things at once. I watch documentaries while working out. I'm being serious. Like, I'll watch, like, Mark Felton Productions or, like, Kings and Generals, like Alexander Conquering India or something like that. And I'll be watching a screen while working out. And I tend to find that if I'm kind of focusing on that, like, I know you should concentrate on the exercise. Like, it's a good balance of both. But I just tend to find that I'm always keeping myself entertained. I'm doing something, like, I could be sitting down watching it, or I could be working out and watching it at the same time. So I feel like I'm making a better use of my time. For me, I know with working out, that's what it does. So for me, doing it over and over again doesn't become an issue. All I need to do is eat now. I need to balance out with the eating. That's where I struggle. The eating part is where I find it boring.
I think it's just because it's like eating and that. There's no. I mean, there is a definitive kind of like, if you know, they say balanced diet, it's calories in versus calories out and all that kind of stuff. But there is so many kind of like, oh, this is better than this, and did you know that like carbohydrates fund like corruption and stuff? You know, like that's basically like what it's out there. And like sometimes when I look at all this, and then it gets me doubting myself sometimes. Like, you know, when it's like you shouldn't have had 75 grams of dried white rice, and I was like, he's right, I shouldn't have had. You know what I mean? But then I'm like, white rice isn't even that bad, you know, and then it's just all this kind of thinking that's going on in my head, and I always fall into the trap of getting myself stressed over things I really shouldn't be stressed over, you know, like.
No, in the end, like, I don't know, I think I just kind of slightly become more fed up with all that stuff.
Yes.
I'm so used to living in this age of misinformation. Well, not just misinformation, there is correct information, and then they say that correct information is wrong, and then they change it again, then they change again, and then all of a sudden everyone's opinions are correct, then everyone's opinions are wrong.
Yes.
And, you know, in the end, it's just kind of like,
isn't it
for me, I'm not trying to sound selfish, but in the end, I just focus on myself, and I'm just like, look, I want to get this.
Yeah.
I'm looking at results of people that I've seen where the good thing, like me, I look at the bad results, I look at the good results. Some things work for people that won't work for someone else. So in the end, I think it's worth exploring stuff, you know? And I'm just like, just eat.
Yeah.
Just eat. Like, just keep eating, keep working out. Because if you have everything else around it, it should cancel each other out.
Right, yeah.
Because it's kind of like having too many bananas. Apparently, too many bananas could kill you.
Yeah.
I mean, too much of anything can kill you, you know? Like, if I just had water and not eat, then you die. So.
And I suppose it's like keeping yourself in a good mind frame as well, right? Like, if people, like, you know, when people try to, like, say, like, the night before, they're like, yes, right, boiled chicken, white rice, and broccoli, and that's all I'm eating. And then, like, 30 minutes into it, they can't eat because they don't like that food. Like, they're gonna make themselves miserable doing that. You know, like it doesn't.
Dude, I'm trying to get out of that now.
Yeah,
I'm doing the broccoli, chicken, and rice stuff now. I'm just like But that's why I started flavoring stuff. I actually started experimenting. Well, that's why you said like the positive mindset. I'm just trying to see what fun I can make out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's the trick. You got to try and make everything fun.
Yeah, you got to try and like find your own kind of balance. With
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like, yeah, just got to try and make it fun. I think that's just the secret. Just make it fun.
Yes.
Whatever you're doing, just make it fun. The murder, make it fun. Be creative with the way you kill people.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Confessions of a Serial Killer.
yeah. That's the documentary we're making actually.
Tonight on the Twilight.
Yeah. Well, you're originally through here this week as we were meant to start documentary making, but funnily enough, COVID struck, and
you know the funny thing is that when you told me about that, that's like the second person this week I know who got COVID, and then I was busy speaking with somebody else who I was actually supposed to be meeting back in Inverness. They got COVID as well.
So I from the person actually getting COVID through here has actually stopped you from being a close contact of someone with COVID. So it's all worked out for the better.
Yeah, I know. In the end, I'm like, hey, I gotta spend a few more days in the last month. But I was really sorry. I only learned that this morning as well. This is like because I was supposed to be meeting the person this Friday, and they're like, oh, I got COVID.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
I mean, a lot of people are gonna get it, right? But like, it is.
Yeah, but at this point, it's just like
mild, isn't it?
Yeah, we just like it's like the common cold now. We just want you to get it going. Yeah, look, I don't know the science. I'm just saying what I'm seeing. Like, it's just getting it, and then they're like, had it, gone.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of Zika virus when I was in Brazil.
Yeah, that was something like, that was one of those other scares. It was like, was that from like the Amazon rainforest or something like that?
Something like that, but when I was there, they were like, it's been here for years. It's not even that big of a deal. In the end, I think it was some corporate ploy to like hamper the Olympics there. That's the only way I can. I gotta be honest. That's the only way I can make sense of it in my mind because the Brazilians were like, Zika virus ain't that bad.
Right. Okay.
So I was like, oh, okay.
It's crazy. Like, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, we were meant to be starting that this week. I was looking forward to that. But obviously, we have established recently that part of filmmaking is you do not a lot of filmmaking for some periods of time.
Yeah, it was 80% of filmmaking is just you setting up everything. That's the reason I want to do business again.
Yes.
I mean, 80% of it is actually that.
Well,
yeah. Okay, the end is nigh.
Yeah, maybe we might be getting cut off in a second.
War's
I'm
gone across the pond.
I'm gonna upload this. Some guys are walking this garage in like 30 years' time and find this in the rubble.
Edgy joke. You hear Russian outside.
Yeah. our ending it on a deep note. Our hour is up. Thank you very much for coming on once again, friend. I know we've kind of done this last minute as our original plan was to be interviewing this week,
fine,
but
man.
that will come. And I suppose we'll see you when the documentary is out in 2035.